On Moonday, December 30th, 1957, a shaman came to Earth with much to do. The moon was on a teeter-totter between Aries and Taurus, the two houses that balance the divine masculine and feminine essence. His life path number was a 1, the number of the master builder. His name was Leroy Roper Jr., a multifaceted talent and divine soul whose range covered journalism, poetry, divination, trumpet musicianship, body art, backdrop creation, and so much more. His works carried an intense prophetic tone effortlessly, and much of his work was dedicated to the healing and empowerment of women. I'm honored to say I am one of those women. For me, Leroy, alongside Tiffany Diamond, opened the portal to my divine journey on August 1st, 2010. They were my godparents in terms of general spirituality that pulled me beyond religion. And when the winds of change tossed my life in her tornadoes, I had a fighting chance because of the heads up I was given in their tarot readings, and a glimpse of who I would become in the photo shoot titled The Rebirth of the Dragon. And tonight, 222.9 The Mothership honors the legacy of Leroy Roper Jr. with this interview titled Where Prophecy and Paint Collide. And we're back. And tonight, I have the honor of speaking with the wife, the creative muse, dancer and performer, and extraordinary makeup artist. And I love to call her my Tinkerbell because in terms of general spirituality, this is also a godmother figure for me. How you doing tonight, Miss Tiffany Diamond?
Hello, love. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for agreeing to this interview because Leroy Roper meant so much to me, and as do you. And I'm just really glad that you're here tonight to help honor his legacy and keep everything flowing.
Absolutely. I'm so honored to be here, and I'm so grateful that you want to honor him in this way.
Absolutely, and your work as well. Thank you. Because Leroy was someone who not only brought us together, but spent his life dedicating his artwork and his creative genius and even his spirituality to the upliftment of women. So before we get to you and Leroy, let's tell us more about you. What would you like to share about your creative background?
So my creative background, goodness gracious, I've done a lot. The main thing was my career dance, my dance career. About 30 years as a professional career dancer. Started teaching straight out of high school, right at 18 years old. Traveled the world, performed with celebrities, started the first dance team for the Dallas Stars Ice Girls in our great city of Dallas. Did a lot of stuff, and as well as in the art scene as well as a hair and makeup artist, and have dipped my feet in the photography realm as well. I am published nationally and internationally as a photographer as well. So just a little bit of everything.
What made you want to take a creative path in life?
So the initial nudge from the universe, which was super loud and clear, was when I was a teenager. I had entered a dance competition as a soloist, and I had only been dancing for probably about a year, as far as having dance lessons and then being on my high school dance team. And I entered a solo competition with 500 soloists, and I won.
Hey, go ahead, Tina.
And I won, and it was really crazy too, because I'll remember it I will never forget it. The judges actually had to walk the trophy to me because, I competed. I made it to the top 10. I was elated, and we had to compete again with the top 10 finalists. And they announced my name, and I was still in that fog of like, well, surely it was another Tracy Ross, And I'm like clapping, and I'm looking around, and I'm like,
oh, wait,
and they had to walk the trophy over to me. That's how, just dumbfounded I was. And then that was pretty much the moment that I said, oh, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
that spark of divine purpose feeling.
Yes, absolutely. And then I never looked back. And, I feel very blessed that I was able to actually have a career as a performing entertainer. Very, very blessed. Like I said, I got to travel the world and meet amazing people and have a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, we all know that creativity and spirituality are intertwined. What for you? Was spirituality always intertwined with your creative sense, or was there a space where it was awakened?
So I would say a little bit of both. I would say when I was younger, there was always that searching, I think that we all do, seeking and searching, Luckily, I kind of knew my purpose very young with dance and with entertainment, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do with my life, and that I wanted to use my creativity for that. Mm-hmm. So for me, again, it was kind of both. It went hand in hand because it was my belief and my spirituality, I think, that really got me to some of the places that I was able to go to. There were, career dancers that I knew that absolutely could dance rings around me, mm-hmm. That I looked up to, that I just thought, oh my gosh, we're amazing. But they would do the simplest of things, like not show up for the audition, chicken out. And just by simply me, believing in myself and believing in my talents and not listening to any of the naysayers and showing up to the auditions, I got to travel the world and do things that most people would dream of. Yes. And I highly believe that it was my spirituality that nudged me toward that, because again, otherwise I definitely could have been one of those people that, chickened out and didn't believe in myself and missed all of the opportunities. But I went for all of the opportunities and knew that I had guidance along the way.
And speaking of guidance, we all know it was a divinely guided collision for you to cross paths with Leroy Roper Jr. So,
yes.
If you will, tell me how you guys met. How did that happen?
It's really an amazing story. So again, I had been kind of a world traveler. I was back in the Dallas area, and I was kind of planting my feet back into Dallas kind of permanently again. And I was doing a show where Leroy was the featured artist and I was one of the featured entertainers. Mm-hmm. Back in those days, this is back in 2006, Leroy was very infamous for not going to the events that he was featured in. He was very infamous for painting up the models and sending them with the artwork, and he would stay his little happy butt at the studio and watch Casablanca and relax. And that's exactly what happened. We had this event. He was featured. I was featured. At the time, one of his best friends, and really up until the day he died, her name is Annette Conlon. Annette and Doug Conlon. And back in the day, they had this band. I don't know if you remember. Back in the day, there was a band called Eden Automatic, and they were a local Dallas band. And anyway, they were featured. They were playing at the event, and she and I got to talking. She and I really ended up being kindred spirits. And at the end of the night, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, wait a minute." She said, "Have you have you never met Leroy? And I was like, no, I've never met him. And she was like, you're kidding me. And I said, no, I've never met him in the flesh. Just, I've done this event. I'm here at this event. And she was like, well, you need to meet him. She said, you two are kindred spirits. And she said, I never would have been able to tell that you two hadn't met just from speaking with you. Mm-hmm. And so it was after that event that I reached out and, I was like, hey, we did this event. He said, I know who you are, silly. I did the flyer.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like, okay, well, would you like to go get some coffee or, what would you like to do? And he was like, again, silly, I don't do that. I don't go out.
Wow.
And he said, but I have a whole photography studio. Why don't you come here and let's do a photo shoot? So yeah, that's exactly what happened. I came in, I did a photo shoot, and long story short, I pretty much just never left.
So how did it feel? Because I know with photographers, there are 1,000,001 photographers that are looking for their muses. But with Leroy, shooting with him, that was a whole spiritual outer body divination and experience. I even as a my background is having done modeling, print modeling before myself. I can't call that experience a photo shoot. I can't. It minimizes it. So I want to know, what was your reaction the first time you shot with him and experienced the way I can't even say did photography, but the way he created art. I know that had to have blown you away from everything else you may have been used to.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I never left. I never left. I just kept coming back, And we really truly were kindred spirits, and we were having such a great time that creatively, spiritually and creatively, when we got together, we were like two kids in a candy store, and let's do this, let's create that. And yeah, that really drew us together. But yeah, it blew my mind. Absolutely. It was definitely like nothing I had ever experienced. I wanted to continue to be a part of it.
So for you, was it always an esoteric experience, or at what point, especially with Leroy working with other models, and you saw how the artwork was turning into spiritual healing work, did you notice that coming in through the door, or was there a point where that grew?
So I noticed it immediately, obviously, because I got the same thing. I got the exact same treatment in the beginning. Leroy's work, he was very much about, he didn't want to just rush through it, come in and paint you as something. Right. He wanted to sit you down. He wanted to speak to you. Get to know you a little bit. It also helps you to relax a little bit, because you are going to be shedding at least a certain amount of clothing, if not all of your clothing, in order to become a piece of artwork. And,
absolutely.
That can be, very intimidating for some people. So, he wants a period where let's sit and let's talk. Let me get to know you. And then another step in that would be, the tarot card reading, because he, again, not the traditional scary tarot. He read the Osho Zen deck, which basically was about the here and now, and it was basically just it read the energy at the moment, and that had a lot to do with what he would end up painting you as. Oh, yeah. So if a woman came in feeling very down, depressed, or going through something very difficult or very hard, and they needed to feel light and airy, he would paint them as an angel or a butterfly, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody came in and they were feeling super feisty and they felt like they needed to tear some shit up or something,
yes,
he would do them as a dragon or a tiger, or some sort of a cat, or if they were going through something really emotional, he would do a mermaid, so he didn't want to just paint you with something. He wanted it to be something that 20 years from now you could look back at it and you could remember exactly what you were going through and what you overcame during this happen.
That's why I said, uh-oh, I think you just kind of snitched on Leroy there when you said people about to tear shit up. The title of my shoot was The Rebirth of the Dragon.
Yes.
Oops. So you mentioned to me when we created the flyer that the image that's used, and it's the image that's going across the video version of this interview, where it says new growth. And wasn't that one from was it the first shoot? Because the title of that one is New Growth.
That was the very first time I ever met Leroy in his studio, and that was the very first photo shoot we ever did together.
So he marked the beginning of your spiritual growth and journey in a sense as well.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. Because when I met him, again, like I said, I was going through another major transition. I had been traveling and performing and teaching, and I was just planting my feet back into the Dallas area. Basically, trying to rebrand myself here in Dallas and, get work and get gigs. So that's hence the title of New Growth. That was his kind of, kickoff for me of like, let's paint you as what you want to do, what you see your life as. And at that time it was brand new growth. I didn't know what anything looked like. I didn't know what the future looked like. But come to find out, it was sticking around and hanging out with Leroy.
Absolutely, because, and I didn't know that about that photo, but I've seen a lot of the works that he's done with you, and there's none I can't say that I don't like. But it was that one that really jumped out at me.
Thank you. When you sent me the flyer, I was like, that's incredible, because that's actually the very first time that we met and shot, and so I thought it was super poignant that was the one that you were drawn to.
You gotta love how the spirit works.
100%.
Which leads to my next question. So after you began shooting as a model with Leroy, what things did you see changing in your life as a result of the prophecy of the tarot and the embodiment of the painting?
Wow. That's a lot. I started hanging out a lot. I mean, I was hanging out with Leroy a lot. Not just because we were having a lot of fun creatively, but, we were getting close. We really enjoyed each other's company. Then we started doing shows together. The show that really kind of solidified us becoming an item, if you will, is we did a show in Galveston, and there was I believe it was a New Year's Eve show, and we got paid a bunch of money to fly to Galveston, and he painted me and another girl that flew with us from Dallas, and then two girls that had flown in from Vegas, and we got painted as cats and basically stood on these stages with big animals while billionaires ate dinner around us, and there were all these bands and all this crazy stuff. But it was it was Mardi Gras. It was a Mardi Gras show in Galveston, and once he and I flew to that show, we actually had an incident where time stopped. It was, and it's a whole other story for a whole other time, but in a nutshell, we were running out of time. We thought that we only had a certain amount of time, and the universe, I don't know what happened, the universe stopped time, turned the clocks back or something. We ended up being an hour ahead, and the show went off without a hitch, and it was it was amazing. So us going through that in Galveston, and then once we came back, I think that was kind of what solidified that we were gonna be a team from that point forward.
And it's interesting because, at what point did you already know that you were continuing something from a past life with him, or that being with him was divine assignment? Did you feel that from the beginning, or did you more so feel that when things began to grow?
I I felt it definitely from the very beginning, just because, again, I was just replanting my feet in the area, and I met him through just fate, and oddly enough, it was a company that once we did that show, that company no longer existed.
Wow.
So, yes, and I can't even remember how I met her, but she was this woman from California. She was throwing a show here, and by fate, it ended up being me and Leroy. And some other entertainers and stuff. It was like a 2-day show, I believe. So it spanned over 2 days. But yeah, so I think from the very beginning I knew that, it was fate, call it kismet, whatever you will. Because again, like I said, after that company didn't exist anymore. We never heard about him again.
That's like once the spiritual door is open, the two that are supposed to walk through it go through the door, and then the door disappears.
Exactly. And again, like I said, one of his best friends was there, and she and I talked all night until she realized that I hadn't even met Leroy. And that's when she was like, oh, you have to, you must. So even to this day, she likes to credit herself, pat herself on the back for introducing us. And I'm grateful to her too. She's a baby doll lover.
Oh yes, you gotta love the destiny helpers. That's what I call those, the destiny helpers.
Yes.
So how did Leroy even start doing the body art and the backdrops, and how did all of that start, or did he ever tell you?
So I will try. Leroy, forgive me if I mess this up. I'm going to try to tell it as best as I remember. But obviously it wasn't an always thing. Leroy would always tell people he had been an artist since he was like 8 years old. When his brother gave him a pencil and told him to draw something, and he drew it. I can't remember what it was. It was like a lion or something like that. And then his brother said, hey, you should be an artist. And then that was all she wrote. So I know, like, through high school and I believe college, he was a horn player, the trumpet. He was a trumpet player. He loved the wind instruments. By the time he got out of college, he would tell these stories of working in a muslin factory, which oddly enough ended up being the actual fabric that he painted his backgrounds on later in the future, like 20 years later in the future. He was also a journalist for the newspaper for a while. Back in the day, before computers, when we had just, available great, photography that would print on cheap newspaper, for just average advertisements, he would draw refrigerators and washing machines and stuff for the newspaper for advertisements.
I love it.
And I don't think it was until he moved here into Dallas, which I believe was 1980, was when he first moved from El Paso area to Dallas. And opened up his studio with his brother, which was called Inkworks Backdrops. And mainly that's what they were doing. They were painting backdrops for television commercials and things like that, theater sets. I know, like, he painted a backdrop for Braniff Airlines, Braniff Air commercial back in the day. I think he painted a background for Oprah back in the day, and so back then that's what they were doing. And I forget exactly how it happened, but there was an ad. It was an ad, and I think it was like for Neiman Marcus, for downtown Dallas, Neiman Marcus, and they wanted to do this upscale ad. And if you remember the baby oil commercials from back in the day, where it has the baby and the dog is like biting the diaper and the baby's on the beach.
Oh yeah.
Well, they wanted to. It's an idea like that, and God, I hope I can find the ad. I know he has it somewhere in the archives, but that's another story. I've yet to start going through all of that. But they wanted to do this ad where she's like a tiger and she's pulling at a handsome gentleman walking through the streets of Dallas, right? And that was his first experience in doing body painting, and it turned out so well, and it was so successful that everybody was like, hey man, they would joke with him. They were like, you might be known for this body painting thing one day, and here we are.
Yes. It's interesting how it was spoken into existence.
Yes.
Did he tell you how it collided with becoming a space of healing for women? Like, how did the tarot and everything else incorporate with the body art? Because, that's kind of a fusion, or sometimes people are given that idea up front. So was that an infusion, or was that something he already knew he wanted to do?
So, I wish I could tell you exactly when that particular part of it came about. And I know that there are probably some models out there, and, if somebody is listening in and, you want to email your story about that, like, I think that would be great.
Yes.
Because, again, he had been doing this for quite a while by the time we collided in 2006. Uh-huh. So, I know that he had always been very spiritual. His grandmother was very spiritual. He was very close to her. His mom was also very spiritual. Also a wee bit of a witchy lady, wonderful woman, Angie Roper. And, rest her soul as well. But he grew up in El Paso. Mm-hmm. So he spoke fluent Spanish, and he would tell me stories of, he had a friend of his in El Paso that was one of the first ever female bullfighters. Wow. And she would tell him the stories of how before her bullfights she would go and visit the church and, light a candle, and then she would go visit the bruja and go get the witch's blessing as well. And so he learned a lot, I think, through witchy friendships and witchy people that he met out in El Paso. El Paso is a very
I know,
witchy place, yes. And he grew up right there on the border, and he grew up during the era where, like, you would cross the border on the weekend. That's what you did. You went to Mexico and hung out, and maybe you ate some peyote in the desert. That's
yes, because I remember having a conversation via Facebook Messenger with Leroy when we were talking about our gifts, because I was, I made sure that both him and you knew that for me, you two definitely opened the portal and gave me the heads up about what was about to happen in my life.
Yes.
And the way it was just so bullseye solid. But now I have to echo you and say, I hope I don't mess this up. But I do remember him saying something to me about getting a tarot reading, and then the tarot reader gave him the tarot deck and said he was the one who was supposed to be reading them.
Yes, ma'am. That's right. You're right. That's it. Yeah, you're right. That's right. I remember now. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for remembering that.
Yes. That memory came to mind. Well, we know his ancestral spirit is guiding this interview, because he kept so much mysterious while he was here. So he's like, I'll let you guys let a few things out.
Yes. Sure.
He really liked being a mystery, didn't he?
He really did. I also think that because he was such a healer, he was also very much an empath.
Oh, yes.
And, he could feel people. And so I think, at least before I came along, and also from what I've been told, because everybody said before you came along, he didn't go to his shows, and I know that because the first show I did with him, he wasn't there. Once we got together, people kind of said, you had brought him out of his cave. You brought him out and about, and people loved it, because they were like, oh my gosh, it's actually Leroy. We get to actually see him in the flesh, But I think maybe the fact of just being an empath, and the fact of just the work that he did, I think that he just kind of preferred to and invite the energy into his space, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yes.
rather than be out amongst all of it.
Yes, because empaths, we are sensitive. We do have to kind of unplug from all the noise.
Oh yeah, and he was happy. I mean, that man would be happy, like just not going anywhere, and throwing on, like I said, Casablanca was his favorite movie, and he could sit back, pop open a Natural Light beer, and sit there and watch Casablanca all night while the party's happening somewhere in the town. With his artwork.
I love it. I love it. So at what point did you become Leroy Roper's makeup artist?
So it wasn't too long after we started hanging out, because again, it was one of those things where, I had my own place and I had my own thing going on. I was the choreographer for the Ice Girls, and I was getting that whole thing started up, and I was just spending a lot of time over there, and it was getting to the point where, it's like, it's young love, like we're just loving each other's company, and he would call, and he'd be like, hey, I'm just taking a break, I'm doing a photo shoot. And I'm like, okay, well, let me know whenever you're done and I'll come over. He's like, no, you can come over now. And I'm like, well, you're doing a photo shoot. And he's like, that's okay, you can hang out in the back room.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be sitting in the back room watching an old black and white movie,
right,
hanging out, drinking a glass of wine. And then it basically started to get to where it was like, dude, I'm just sitting back here and y'all are out there having fun creating, and I don't know if you know this, but I'm a pretty good makeup artist, and well, maybe one of these days I could actually join you and let me show you what I can do. And he was like, okay, because he was also very infamous for, he didn't want to work with anybody else. It was his work. Makeup artists also, the cycle of makeup tends to be trendy, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It ages, and he didn't want that. He wanted this you look at it 20 years from now and it looks timeless.
Absolutely.
I don't want your makeup trend or your hair trend to make this look dated. Right?
Absolutely.
He's painting you as a classic piece of art. So, I said, hey, I've been an entertainer for a lot of years, and I'm a really great makeup artist and hairstylist if you will give me a chance. And so what he ended up doing was he called his best friend, Sarah, and her model name at the time was Ruka. Mm-hmm. And he invited Ruka over for me to do her hair and her face makeup, and he was just going to do some portraiture. So he didn't even body paint her. So we did the photo shoot, and Sarah came back the next day and said that her mother bawled when she was looking at the photos, because she said that Sarah looked just like her grandmother.
Oh, wow.
Because I did a pin-up style on her. I did like the pin curls, like the victory rolls, and the bright red lipstick, and we put some classic, feathery, furry stuff on her, and that's when Leroy goes, well, shit, I guess I have to let you do the hair and makeup now.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Oh,
yeah, so then that's how that started, and then basically I was like, well, I guess I need to move all my shit in, and that's what happened too. So I moved out of my apartment and moved into the studio, and that was all she wrote. There began the madness and the wonderfulness.
Absolutely. Because, we spoke about this before. I'm really skeptical about who I allowed to touch my hair, my face, my makeup. Yes. But I was really comfortable with you. And it was like the contrast of both of your energy was like the perfect complement. Because it's like his energy was very strong and kind of stern, and you were more of the butterfly.
Thank you.
When I first saw you, I was like, oh, Tinkerbell. The real life Tinkerbell. And so, how did the meditative state go about, when the model is being painted and adorned? How did that come about? Was that something you just kind of joined him on, or was that something y'all collaborated on?
So that is 100% something that I joined him on. one of the things that I was very adamant about was that, again, you know, he never used any makeup artists. He never allowed anybody that space. And so I felt very grateful and I felt very honored, even though we were dating at the time, but I felt very honored that he was going to let me be a part of his artwork like that. So my vision and goal was always to match what he was doing. So typically, I would let him start painting before I would even touch the face or the hair. Because again, I was also very fast and I could get the hair and makeup done and he could still be working on the body for a while. So I would always wait to see what type of a flow he was doing, what colors is he using, you know, what background are we going to go with? Sometimes we knew, sometimes we didn't, and and he would just tell me curl the hair or braid the hair or whatever, you know. And that was pretty much my role in it as far as the physicality of it. It wasn't until later on people gave Leroy tarot cards. People just gave him tarot cards. He had stacks and stacks of tarot cards laying around that most of them he never even used because he preferred the Osho deck. And he had this one deck, which was the Native American medicine tarot.
I think I have that one.
Yes, well, that's the one that he gave to me eventually. Because up until that point, he was the one doing the readings, and I was kind of playing around with that deck, and he was kind of letting me do readings here and there intermittently.
Yes.
And then it got to the point where women would come over and he would do a reading for them, and then they would look at me and they would go, well, can I have one of your readings? And I was like, oh, well, they're not really my cards. And finally, Leroy said, no, they're yours. And so he signed the book and he signed the deck over to me. And from that moment forward, I was reading those tarot cards along with him in conjunction with figuring out, you know, what we're going to create together with the person that was there.
I love the formula. I really loved it. Like, that was something, like I said, shooting with Leroy wasn't it? It was a divine experience. I couldn't even call it a photo shoot with the two of you, because there was a reading, there was a meditation, and then there was a prophecy that literally manifested over the span of 7 years.
Yes.
For me.
And
oof.
And you know, one of the things I'd like to read this because, and you know, any of the models that are listening right now they're gonna tear up, they're gonna choke up when they hear this. But this is literally what he would say as he was putting the very first stroke of paint on the model's body. And it is, you are as powerful as the most powerful thing in the universe, yet as insignificant as a grain of sand, but the universe would shed a tear if one grain of sand were missing. You are a gift and a blessing.
Ashe. I remember that.
Yes, ma'am.
I remember
and that would be his opening as he started to paint you. So again, you know, it was his work, you know, and he was so brilliant and just created just things that looked like $1 million. But at the end of the day, he wanted it to be about you. Another one of his mottos, which a lot of people will recognize as well, is he would always say, you know, there is a character in Greek mythology that carries the weight of the world upon his shoulders. I believe that most women accomplish that feat. I believe that most women accomplish that feat on a daily basis. We all came to the earth through the vessel of a woman.
Ashe. Yes.
So I kind of break it down as that was his mission statement. You know, Atlas carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. He believes that every woman goes through that on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And we all came through the earth, you know, to the earth through the vessel of woman. And his mission really was about the empowerment of women. And, you know, people would ask, and he would paint men. It was very few and far between. It was very specialized situations, because people would ask him and go, well, why don't you body paint men? And he said, well, you know, my work is about the empowerment of women, and I feel like most men are already empowered. You know, most men are already empowered. They don't need my empowerment. My work is about empowering women. And so he was very, very adamant about that. And he would, again, you know, if anybody gave pushback, because again, you look at the work and you're like, this stuff is so beautiful. Yes. And what you don't realize is, like, you can't tell the women that have had mastectomies. You can't tell the women who were severely obese, lost all the weight, and had to have skin removed and were scarred from head to toe. You can't see the women who were burn victims, because when they're painted and when they're in the background, it's art.
Yes.
And you can't tell. And so one of the last things that I'll say that was one of his mottos is, I will gladly tell anyone, if you have a beautiful heart, I will always be able to take beautiful pictures of you, regardless of society's interpretation of beauty at the time. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and I am beholding beauty.
I love it. Oh my goodness, so healing. So healing. I love it.
And so everybody looks at the work and they go, God,
yes.
Who's that hottie?
Yes.
Who's that model? It's like, no, that's a school teacher that just lives down the road, you know, has some kids and works a regular job. There's only about 10% of the people that he ever worked with that were actually musicians, models, you know, artists, celebrities, right?
Yes, he made stars.
Only about 10%. Most of the rest of everybody were everyday people.
Oh,
everyday
man.
women.
That's so amazing. I didn't know that. I knew there was a lot of models, but you know, they all looked so beautiful. And I was like, wow, these have got to be some serious top-notch women.
And that's what would always make him giggle, because people would go, oh my God, like, that's so beautiful. I couldn't be as beautiful as that. And it's like, well, that's a burn victim.
Right.
What are you talking about? You're beautiful. He would look you straight in your eye and go, that's a burn victim.
Absolutely.
Look how beautiful you are, talking shit about yourself. Stop doing that. Get in here. Get on my table. Let me show you how beautiful you are.
I love it. Oh my goodness, I love it. It's like I'm getting chills now. So, how did Gothic Vogue come about? Tell me about Gothic Vogue.
So Gothic Vogue was very much a thing that was all Leroy, and he had actually started that magazine right before I met him. He had always kind of dabbled in doing, you know, dark imagery, because again, like, he worked with women from all backgrounds. Again, it's like, when he first met me, I always laugh and say he kind of had to drag me into the dark, because he was like, okay, listen, you know, little fairy princess, little Vegas showgirl, glitter girl, you know, like, let's, I know you've got a dark side, let's paint some dark stuff, you know. And I was always like, I don't know, I'm not that Gothic girl. He's like, the hell you're not. You know?
Right.
And but he worked with a lot of, you know, fetish models and people in the underground scene and that type of thing. And basically, as he started to do that work, he started to notice that there were very few magazines that catered to that material, unless it teetered on, you know, corn. Right? unless it teetered on, you know, completely adult entertainment, and he didn't want that. You know, he believed that you know, there was beauty in the darkness, and so that was his whole goal. And so after I think a couple of years doing his dark imagery and being frustrated that he couldn't find, you know, anything that he could, like, refer to, he said, well, fuck it, I guess it's got to be me.
Absolutely. I love that, because oftentimes in the creative world, you have to create what you want to see. When you're looking for it and it's not there, that's the space the universe created for you to put what you want to see happen there.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and so that's how that came about, and it ended up being really great for a while. You know, we were actually having stuff done in print, and then it wasn't until like a little bit later that the Gothic Vogue stuff kind of fell off, and it just kind of became, it's Leroy Roper, you know.
Yes.
Because by that era, Facebook was the thing, MySpace was gone, you know, and then Instagram and all the other stuff, and so he just kind of would compile it into one. He does have, I think, still on Facebook, like a Gothic Vogue page and a Fans of Leroy Roper page, but he was just more active on his just straight Leroy Roper page there toward the end, and just letting it all be what it was.
You know, you pretty much carried the conversation straight to my next question. He put some amazing writings on Facebook. What are your thoughts on his poetic skills and his writings?
So, oh my goodness. Yes, it is evident that he was a man who was just impregnated with thoughts, you know, like he was so impregnated with creativity that, I mean, it had to come out of him, you know. And, you know, thank God for this era of Facebook, because there's so many people that needed it as well.
Yes,
you know.
yes.
I remember, you know, as he got sick and he really wasn't able to be, I mean, he was on Facebook every day. Sometimes he'd post 2-3 poems a day, you know. Sometimes, you know, it'd be a photo shoot and some poetry, you know, but people really looked forward every day to seeing what's Leroy gonna post today.
Yes.
I
was one of them.
Yes, and you know, even now, as I have slowly started to go through his things, you know, I'm keeping a little envelope of envelopes and napkins and stuff that I'm finding all over the house, where he, you know, like, this had to get out, this thought had to get out, and it's his words just scribbled on a piece of paper or a napkin or an old envelope, you know.
Yeah.
As I'm going through the home, you know, I'm finding papers with just beautiful scribbles on them, you know.
Yes.
And it's just a scribble. It's just something that he just was sitting there doodling while he was on the phone with someone, and it's beautiful. You know,
yes.
like, and so I just feel like he was, you know, as far as his poetry, it was another way for him to get out of him what was just piled up in there.
Yes.
You know, it all just came pouring out in one way or another, and it had to continuously pour out. I mean, there wasn't a day that he didn't create something.
And it's still pouring out.
And it's still pouring out, girl. I'm going through the house, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here's more stuff. But it's wonderful, you know. And I'm like, I got this little box. I'm like, well, I'm putting that in there too. I'm putting all the scribbles, you know, all the writings, all the poetries, and everything. The celebration of life is still going to be a ways off. I had, you know, he passed away in July.
Yeah.
And I have a 30-year legacy of artwork and writings to go through, so it's going to take a minute. It's definitely been cathartic, and it's been a joy, you know, finding those bits and pieces, and it's going to be very it's going to take a minute to archive all of the poetry.
Well, I don't think it's going to be archived. I'm seeing like some kind of page and post and things like that. And okay, I'm Miss Empath. I'm gonna need you to stop stealing the next question right off my head. It's
I am
funny.
so sorry.
No. It's good. It's good. This is how we know the interview's flowing. This is the energy flow. This is the energy flow. Because my last question was actually, this is the last question. How does the legacy of Leroy Roper's life, love, artwork, and shamanic wisdom, how does that legacy continue through you?
Woo! So this is something that I'm still learning every day, and I'm still getting my aha moments every day. So he, I have his tarot cards, and one of the posts that I had made pretty recently after he passed away, I had done a reading with his cards and spoke to him. And one of the cards that I pulled, it sent me into tears. And what's so crazy, Jansa, is right before I was getting ready for this interview with you, I said, all right, Leroy, let's do a quick little reading. And what's funny is this particular card, it came up again. And every time that Leroy and I would do a reading with the two of us, we would do a 5-card spread. We'd do the reading, and we would gather the cards up and we'd shuffle them. We'd split them one time and we'd turn them over to see what was on the bottom. And that's what happened twice. Once, I made a post about it a few weeks ago, and it happened right again before this interview. And it's so poignant that you asked me that question, because the card that I pulled was the story of Ananda. And the story of Ananda is that Ananda was Buddha's most faithful pupil. Okay? He followed Buddha around. He wanted to learn everything. He wanted to reach enlightenment. And it said that basically, he was right there by Buddha's side when Buddha died. And when Buddha died, Ananda was just distraught. He was in tears. He was crying. He couldn't contain himself. And the village people said, why are you crying? Like Buddha gave you all of this beautiful knowledge. And Ananda said, I'm not crying because Buddha died. I'm crying because he's gone, and I'm still not enlightened. What am I going to do now? And it is said that Ananda cried himself to sleep, and the next morning he woke up and he was enlightened. And he immediately remembered all of the things that Buddha had taught him, and he ended up, being a great leader of the townspeople. This was the card that I drew twice when I was like, okay, Leroy, what do I do? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And I was like, oh, well done. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Just continue the enlightenment.
Moving forward, I'm taking it step by step, and the universe and Leroy now as an ancestor is guiding me and showing me, step by step, how I move forward with all of this. And I think the ultimate thing that I am keeping my focus on as I move forward is that we're all Ananda.
Yes, absolutely.
Even if you didn't, there's only a handful of people that ever got to be touched by his brush, or that ever got to have a card reading from him, or a hug from him, or got to read his poetry on Facebook, right? However he touched people, there's only a finite amount of people that ever got to do that, right?
Yes.
And if you were one of the ones, such as yourself, that got to get like the whole shebang,
yes.
The wisdom, the photo shoot to prove it, the t-shirt, the whole shebang, man, you're
blessed.
You're also Ananda. There's so many, there's so many people that he worked with that everybody's story is different. He touched so many people in so many different ways. And that, I think his story is going to be told thousands of ways for a long time.
Yes.
And my, next step is I'm going to be basically going through, and when I say archiving his stuff, it's basically organizing it.
Yes.
Dating it, archiving it, organizing it, putting it in order into a fashion to where it makes sense, and then we can move forward at having a celebration of life for him.
Yes.
That really showcases his life's work. It's 30 years.
Oh yeah, that you can't cram 30 years of genius into 1 or 2 hours. No.
Yes, ma'am.
No, that's gonna be an ongoing thing, and you have 222.9 the Mothership as an ally, because
I love you, girl. Thank you. I'm gonna need all of that help.
Yes, I am right here because in my spiritual walk, I regard Leroy Roper Jr. as one of my godfathers.
Yes.
Because, you know, I told y'all painted me up and dropped me down a rabbit hole. Here I am.
You were like, I don't do tarot readings.
Oh,
I do not do that.
I was like, oh, Jesus. Literally. My sister Carrie Lee Kelly had no idea what she was really doing when she left me there that day for my birthday.
Nobody did. Nope. Damn, none of us did.
and that's the beauty of allowing divinity to come through you and allow yourself to be worked through. And in a nutshell, I feel that Leroy Roper Jr. was definitely an earth angel that came with messages and healing and left a whole lot behind. We're going to be doing this celebration of life for a while. It's going to take us some years to push all of it out. And I'm here for it.
Yes. And again, you know, like you said, like how do you see like continuing on the legacy? Well, you know what? This right here, this is the first interview I've done since his passing. You know, the first public interview that I've done since his passing, and it's been super cathartic. And I think that my path and how, you know, because again, my whole goal is to honor him,
absolutely,
you know, in the highest way possible. And thank you for being a mirror and, you know, allowing me and allowing this to be the first step of how this is all going to unfold. It's going to be an adventure.
Oh, yes, it's truly my honor. And I humorously say, you might not be the only one Leroy's telling what to do. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. I will get emails every day. Ladies will send me, they'll be like, I had a little funny dream last night and Leroy did this, or they'll send me, you know, little messages like, I felt him, I heard him speaking to me today, and that makes me feel so good when I get those messages, because I know he's tootling around. He's, you know, he's like, I got a few final messages for some people out here. So absolutely, we call that ancestor work. That's just the ancestor at work. Yes. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview. And our listeners, you all make sure you visit the Leroy Roper Jr. Facebook page. I will put that link up. And there will be some other links in the description box of this interview where you can connect to more of Leroy Roper's work. And as always, 222.9 The Mothership Internet Radio honors Leroy Roper Jr. as a distinguished ancestor. We say, Ashe. Ashe. On Moonday, July 7th, 2025, 2 minutes shy of the witching hour, Leroy Roper Jr. gained his heavenly wings and joined the ancestors after giving so many of us our wings while here on earth. The moon was in Sagittarius, ever aiming high. And we, who had the divine privilege of sharing time and space with him, are left to continue his love, his light, and legacy in our being. And in doing so, we are the feathers in his wings. With love and light, we pour libations. 222.9 The Mothership Internet Radio honors the life and legacy of Leroy Roper Jr. and acknowledges him thoroughly as a distinguished ancestor. Ashe.